In this episode of Art of Product, Derrick and I talk about Rob taking over the show from Ben, right? Am I taking over co-hosting duties from now on?
Yeah, this is... Who are you? You've invaded the show.
I know. Ben thinks he's gone for a couple weeks. He's gone for good. Man.
Sorry, Ben.
Yeah. I'm Rob Walling.
Yeah, I'm Derrick Reimer, your normal host. And pleasure to have you today, Rob.
Thanks, man. I'm the abnormal host today.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me on, man.
Yeah.
I was on stacking giant robots. Sorry. Crashing into others.
Smashing.
Yeah. Right. So I was on that a long time ago, really before either of us knew Ben, I think.
Yep.
But I haven't been on Art of Product. So.
Yeah, we were standing around at MicroConf and we were talking to Adam. He's like, "Oh yeah, last time I guested on Art of Product," and you're like, "What the heck, man?"
Yeah, why have you? How have I not been on this? I think there's like a 6 degrees of Rob Walling thing with podcasts because I've been on so many of them. But
right.
So I was like, I don't think we've been on.
Yeah.
Come and talk about some stuff.
It's so good to finally have you. I have to ask, get this out of the way up front. Do you prefer retired or unemployed?
Probably unemployed. I think retired sounds so. It makes me feel old,
right?
Which I'm not that old, and I really am enjoying the not going into work thing.
I bet
missing pieces of it, as I'm sure you are.
Yeah,
the team and stuff, but I'm not missing the fact that I do not have Slack on any of my devices.
That's music to my
ears.
It is
crazy,
yes.
Yeah.
That was a great moment. Actually, was when I deleted Slack off my phone because they didn't actually boot me out of Slack right away, which is kind of funny. Like it was like I was sort of still in stuff in case they had questions in the weeks following. But I waited about a week and then I was like, okay, you know what? I think I'm ready to be done with this. And it was a nice moment.
Yeah, I can imagine. I wanted to, so I got a personal laptop, obviously, so when work ended, I moved to that. I never installed Slack on that. Still had it on my phone. And like you said, for a couple days, I got a few questions and stuff from work, which was fine. And then I was like, I'm ready to uninstall this. And then MicroConf started and it's like, I need to keep it on. And it was a little bit agonizing.
I did put it back on for MicroConf.
I know.
And of course, when I did my single sign-on thing, it signed me into 10 different Slacks that I've joined over the years. And I'm like, oh no. Yeah. Like they all have zillions of notifications. Yeah. I'm like, I'm intentionally ignoring those.
Yeah. Oh, I got rid of all those actually. So when I single sign on now, it's just one thing. Like I've logged out of them. So it was good. So I finally deleted Slack off my phone just this morning actually, right before I came over.
Yeah.
So good. I'm waiting for Level to be able to install it.
Yeah. It's funny at MicroConf, I was having a conversation with Garrett Diamond and he was talking about WildBit's new app Conveyor and how they publish stuff about this, but they're just switching from a native Mac app over to an Electron app, which is, Electron is what Atom's built on, it's what the Slack client is built on, and so it gets a really bad rap for being super resource intensive. But it was kind of a fun conversation because, one of the questions I get often is, so how many clients is Level going to be available on? You're going to have mobile, you're going to have desktop right out the gate?
Right.
So.
But does Electron, is that what it's called? Does it allow you to have all those, or
no, it just does desktop?
Desktop.
Yeah.
But it's like it's Windows, Mac, and Linux. Is that the idea? Okay.
Yeah. So
that's where you're going to start.
That's where I'm going to start. Yeah. I pulled down Electron in the last couple of days just to toy around with it, and there's a very nice. There's a Hello World download the code, one line command, and you have a running Electron app, and then you can just kind of use that as a starting point and go from there. So I think I'm going to try to actually. Similar to getting production deployments going early on, I want to try to get some kernel of an Electron app going early on too, so I can sort of build that out in tandem with the web app and see how it goes.
Yeah, and so does the web app live? So you're writing in Elixir, and does it live within the Electron iframe is what I'm thinking, or a container of some kind? Yeah, it's basically.
My understanding is that Electron is basically just a bundled browser inside of so it has Chromium, which is underpinnings of Chrome built into this binary, so it compiles and it can it just pulls your web app down from your servers and can run JavaScript and HTML. You can actually view source and see the same Chrome HTML debugger that you get in other things. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, is there a way? This would be an odd thing to do, but is there a way to take the web? Essentially the Elixir that you're writing, and also is there an Electron equivalent for iPhones and Android? A different container where you can just deploy. I guess it wouldn't be odd. But.
Yeah, so I think there's a thing called PhoneGap, which
I've heard of it.
I've heard of that. It's been around for a while. I don't know how in vogue it is. I think I haven't really kept up with the mobile app industry and how people are doing it, but I know that like that used to be a big thing, and then it for a while was like not the most popular way to do it because the experience just didn't feel quite as smooth.
Not native. Yeah.
But I'm wondering, like, it's 2018 now, like maybe they've improved it to the point where it's not that big of a deal, and hopefully I could build really performant, front end code that doesn't feel choppy. I don't know.
Yeah. It's hard to know. Yeah, because if it doesn't feel native and you're targeting developers, it's going to be rough. Like you're definitely going to have a high bar of usability, or even just they know where the bodies are buried. Developers know how the sausage is made, so they're going to be like, use PhoneGap, and you're not supposed to do that or whatever.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it's funny. I saw a tweet the other day for Twist, which is another Slack competitor out there. Someone was like giving them props, and the way they gave them props was screenshotting the Mac process viewer, and was like, 8 threads. That's what I like to see. Like going native, not using Electron.
Oh my gosh.
I think that may have factored into that developer's buying decision.
Yeah.
The fact that the Mac client is a native Mac client. I'm like, oh no. Is this what I'm going to be dealing with?
Yes, it is actually. Yeah. So are they native? Is it Twist? I always forget if it's Swift or
It's Twist.
You just said it, but do they have native? They have a native Windows app too, and native
I don't
Linux
know.
and native
I don't
iOS?
know. I haven't dug into that.
Okay.
But it wouldn't surprise me, I guess.
Yeah, because they have a team and stuff. Man, not only is that hard to build, that's hard to maintain to keep everything on feature parity. So.
I know. That's I mean, even like to me, it's a big sign that WildBit. I mean, I respect their founders, and I know they produce great software, and even them, like I think they're trying to go the pure approach, and we're going to build native, and it's going to be great. And then they found, actually talking to Garrett, he was like, the biggest reason why they decided to punt on that is because they're so accustomed to their designers being able to like basically build out the front end and take it that far. And so the boundary between front end and design and back end was, they're just used to that in the web flow, and in with the native app, like the designers could only go to mock-up stage and then had to hand off to developers to do all the rest. And that just was such a big shift that it just didn't fit with their the way their organization's used to building software.
Totally. And that reminds me of web versus desktop back when we were still doing Windows apps and .NET. I know people still do it, but when I was in that, it was the same thing. Designers would give it to us, and then it's like, you can't just give me the view layer in essence, And it's like, no, you have to build this out now. And it was kind of ugly. So
I remember that was even at Drip when we first joined the team. Remember when we were telling them about telling the Lead Pages team how we like to hire designers, and we're like, actually, we look for people who can, not only build in Sketch or Photoshop or whatever, but take it into HTML, CSS, and own that whole thing. And I remember some people there were like, sort of like mind blown, like, wow, that's so amazing if you can find people to do that.
Right.
But I feel like that's such like the way to do it these days.
Yeah.
And
it's certainly the way that you and I wanted to do it. Is to avoid having that extra layer, right? And when you're small, it's like you need the multi-purpose, the maybe they're not as specialized, but even as we grew, if we had hired folks, there would be too many handoffs. If we had a designer and then that person, I always say slicing, but I know we don't use that anymore. The person turning the sketch into the HTML, And even, our designers get into the view layer. That's why we called them, I think it was the job title was like UX developer. It was like UI/UX developer maybe was the title instead of and designer is someone who, at least in our book, wouldn't take it to HTML. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it reminded me, I want to maybe reminisce a little bit about our times at Drip. It is this podcast called Work Life that it's relatively new. There are a few episodes in.
I haven't heard of it.
And it's I think produced by TED. But so one episode was about the secret to creativity on The Daily Show. And they were kind of talking about like breaking down their process and how they're able to, I mean, that sounds really crazy if you think about it. Writers meet every day and have to basically produce, 22 minutes of comedy content, fresh content every day. And so the two concepts that came out of that, one was called bursting, which is like, or burstiness, which is sort of the phenomenon that happens when you put a group of people in a room and the creative process is going, and it's sort of like people are just throwing out ideas and building off of each other, and they sort of come in bursts, which is where the term comes from. And the other component is psychological safety, which is feeling like you can actually like freely throw out crazy ideas that are maybe sound stupid, but ultimately lead to something good. And they also talk about how the product usually can't be attributed to one specific person because the whole group has sort of contributed, so it gets all muddied up, but they end up with a really good end result. And that reminded me a lot of some of our best brainstorming processes started with what words?
We would this is going to sound like a terrible idea, and we would never do it this way. But what if?
Yep.
Right? Is that it? You know, something like that. And then I'd write it, and it was some preposterous, catastrophic idea that then you took one kernel of, you know, and then we would move on with.
Right. And I'd pull that kernel out, and I'd like throw something out there, and you'd be like, no, it's not quite that. And there'd be something else, and by the end, it was just this iterative process that became something amazing at the end, hopefully, you know? And so, I think that's like a big secret that like, if that's not happening, then I think you're limited on how creative you can be as a team. And I think
totally agree.
You know,
yep. And that's, if you don't have, I think that safety is huge, and it's something that you and I took for granted, I think, once we, as the team grew, and frankly, even with like when Nance joined, right, and then Anna, and these were the early team members, we still had that, and we would all sit in the room and do it. Yeah. And I don't think you and I certainly never lost that, but bringing in new team members after the acquisition, it was always like making them feel comfortable that they could, I think was harder than I thought, because it's just like, no, we just feel comfortable in these rooms, you know? And eventually people would get up to speed with that, but early on they would see you and I throwing things out, and like, it would never get contentious, but we'd just be like writing stuff on a board and doing things, and it was like, whoa, what are these guys doing? You know? And it's like, I don't want to get in the way of their process, and it's like, no, you can contribute too.
Yeah. You know? Yeah, it's like when you're really small, like a lot of these problems of figuring out how to replicate something that's working and expanding it to a team, like you just don't have to worry about that when it's just us, and then we bring on Nance, and you know, Nance gets infused with the culture, and it's just a tiny group of us, and we just, you know, sit around in an office together, so it's pretty easy for someone like him to kind of adopt the culture. But as soon as you're now like splitting into two teams and have, you know, a bunch of different managers and like everyone trying to bring in process, it's just I've come to respect organizations that have scaled and still managed to maintain you know, a culture of creativity and trust and safety and all that kind of stuff.
Big time. Something like The Daily Show. There's a really good audio book it's like 12 or 14 hours. Well, it's a real book, but I listen on it. Yeah. And it's called like The Daily Show, and it talks about that piece of it, and it's all the other stress and how they maintain creativity. Yeah. Another one is the Pixar, maybe it's called The Pixar Touch, and it's by Ed Catmull, and he talks about exactly this, and about how people have to step away from their ideas and they collaborate, but it's a lot about how can you possibly produce that many good films in a row, you know? Right. And I think that's fascinating. The other thing, I realize I'm throwing out a lot of books here, but I listened to
this is good.
I listened to, I'm almost finished with Rand Fishkin's book. It's called Lost and Founder. Yeah. Is good.
Is it?
Like, yeah, it's really good. The first chapter I struggled with a bit because he's kind of you can tell it's more for a layperson. Yeah. And he's like differentiating between what a consulting firm is and a product firm and the benefits. So you could kind of skip that. But as he gets into it, the dude is just so authentic and transparent in a real way, not in a bullshit marketing way, you know? And he, by the time he gets to the end, he's talking about collaboration. And that chapter I just listened to, he was like, the way that we could collaborate and do interesting things is that there was this trust and this you know, ability that you weren't going to get mocked or whatever. Yeah. And I think so it's a common thread. And I think one other thing that you and I had or have is that we can stand in a room with a whiteboard for 4 hours. Yeah. And there can be minutes of silence when we're working through a problem. And we don't feel like we have to speak. Right. And normally that need to speak is because you're uncomfortable. You know, like if you're with someone you don't know, it's weird to just like stand in a room and be silent. What's this other guy thinking? What's going on? What are we doing? Right. But we would just sit there and mull through. And that's always a thing of like deep creativity. Yeah. I've always struggled to do it with other people. Yeah. Because they start talking and it throws me off. So I'll go into a closet, you know, and I'll do it, and then I'll come out and be like, I think this is the answer. Yeah. You and I found a deep creativity together, which I think is a lot harder than it sounds. Yeah. You know, that silence was a big thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's a big part of it. And like one thing they talked about on this podcast about Daily Show is that like one reason why it works is because, I mean, you can't just say like, we have a culture of trust and therefore everyone trust each other, and you know, don't be afraid to throw out crazy ideas, or don't be afraid of silence or whatever. And I think really what it comes down to is the people actually knew each other. Like they deliberately had to put in the time. A lot of people had been there for years, so they did actually know each other and have, you know, some kind of relationship to fall back on that made them feel comfortable. And I think the fact like he was sitting in the room, you know, kind of with his mic on, just capturing some audio, and Trevor walked in, and he was like, one of the striking things was that the vibe didn't change at all, and the burstiness like stopped for a second when he walked in. Everyone greeted him, and then they just kept going. And like with comedy, I mean, you're throwing out things, and a lot of time, like a majority of the things they threw out were like not necessarily that funny, but there was one part of it that was funny. Yep. So like that feels like the extreme case where, you know, when we're debating UI or some feature, like it's not like we're trying to make it funny, but I feel like there's a higher bar for comedy, because if it's not funny, then it's a complete flop, you know?
Right.
So I just thought, yeah, that was really interesting. And like the fact that I think our team that we would brainstorm with felt comfortable with us too, even though technically, like, you know, you're above them in the org chart or whatever, but they, you know,
that stuff has to get thrown out.
Yeah.
And that was the way that we ran the team. Yeah. Cause by the time we brought Brian, the designer, on, and then Brendan, who runs, you know, basically runs the product now. Yeah. That it did take, I think, a few meetings and a few times hanging out with them to kind of ease that in. But I felt like by the time you and I left, that was hopefully ingrained to them, that like we are all on equal footing in this room. Like when we step in, frankly, most of the time anyways.
Right.
I don't know that I ever pulled a rank in like 5.5 years, you know.
Outside of this room, it's a strong dictatorship.
Yeah, exactly.
Heavy top-down control.
But in here, right, you will do what I say. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that magic, there's like, it's black magic, or maybe not black magic, it's light magic. Like there's some magic in it of like figuring out how to, you know, harness that lightning in a bottle.
Yeah. And that's honestly like one of my biggest, I think as I think about, you know, transitioning to level, there's a lot of good things about getting back to, I mean, I'm a team of one right now, so it's a very small team, not even a team, but, and just like having the ability to work on problems that I want to be working on, and using the languages I want to use, and like all this freedom is great. But one of the things that I miss the most is the collaboration, and not just any collaboration, but that kind of the ability to actually come out with a better result with a group of people. Because like you said, a lot of times that's not the case. Like, and that was like a fundamental question this podcast is trying to answer, is like, can groups actually be creative? Because in general, like typical brainstorming is dysfunctional and doesn't actually produce
catastrophic.
You know,
decision by committee is garbage in general.
Yeah.
Right? But then how does Pixar and, you know, these comedy shows that do it well, or a product team that does it well?
Because all these things have a massive machine behind them and lots of people working together. So I just found it really fascinating.
Cool.
And it remains to be seen, like when am I going to get that with level? You know, and I don't know. I don't know how long I'll have to go solo, but
sure.
But I look forward to when I can have that back again.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah,
we should whiteboard too at some point.
We should do it.
We've been talking about it, just haven't made. Microcomp kind of threw a wrench in that, I think, and then you got sick and all that.
Yeah,
so. Cool. So what is up with level? Last update I heard was the podcast. I think it was it was recorded right after MicroConf, right? So when are we going to see some mock-ups? I actually watched part of your YouTube coding video. I was like getting through it. I had no idea what you were doing. But I was like, is he going to show mock-ups? Are there mock-ups? And I don't think you did you?
No, not really. And that's probably the thing. I'm not deliberately procrastinating on it, but I am holding myself to a high standard. I think I talked about this a few episodes back, where like I'm giving myself the ability to like actually produce some really polished flows, as opposed to just showing like raw notebook sketches. Because my biggest concern is that I'm going to show this to people and the response will be like, cool, looks good, you know, and then it's like, well, why did I spend all my time doing this if I'm going to get back cool, looks good, or, you know, whatever. And I think it remains to be seen if the mock-up phase is going to be fruitful, or if it's just going to be like, you're not going to get it until you can actually experience it. And so that's what I'm wrestling with right now, and trying to, I know it's going to take mental energy to just think about like, who do I want to ask for reviews of these, and think about that, and then kind of put together something that's that's kind of a tight package to show people.
That's reviewable, because you're
Yeah.
right. Sketches in a notebook, you could show them to me, and I'm just like, well, what does that button do? Well,
Right.
what is this part here?
Right. Right.
And there's a danger, because you're threading a needle here. There are products that already do this, and you're going to a really tight niche and a really tight use case of less interruption and all that. So if you put something out that generally looks like Slack or a competitor and operates a little bit differently, the mock-ups are not going to indicate that. And so people are going to be like, well, how is this different than whatever? And it doesn't help. So I don't fault you. I think the common wisdom is like, get out there and get MVP and all this stuff, and it's like, I actually think you are in a bit of there's a case to be made for you to be in a unique case here. Open source, freemium, lots of big competitors. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that a lot of other apps don't have to contend with.
So I don't know. I've basically been, for the most part, building product, writing code. Since I've had MicroConf and now I'm sick, like I haven't done more screencasts, but I do want to keep doing that. Like that seems to get, it's one of the highest areas of interest when I produce one of those. People, I get a lot of good feedback from people. I think people like to see how the sausage is made and the inner workings. And I think that's a place where I could reveal, I could do a more subtle revealing of like, here's what I'm looking at for the onboarding flow and how it flows into the actual app. And here's some of the constructs, and start to introduce things through that, and maybe ask, I mean, I can't produce an hour-long video and expect a lot of people to watch the whole thing. Sure. But if I can at least point people to slices of it and get feedback that way, that could be an interesting way, I think, too, to get some early feedback.
Yeah, I think so too.
On flows.
Yeah, I think as I think about it, the one or kind of the danger of not doing mock-ups sooner and writing all the code is, of course, if you can't go back, it's hard to go back and change it. So if you've architected it in a way where you push it out and then people are like, well, I prefer it to be like this or whatever, and there's an overwhelming thing, it's like, how hard is that to go back and change once the code's written? And that's the bottom line, right? If that's easy, then you can wait until it's at least an alpha. Yeah. But
I wouldn't call it easy.
Well, of course not. Yeah,
in software, nothing's easy. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. And rewinding, even like you build out a couple thousand lines of code, you have legacy already, which is like, I'm trying to relish as long as possible in the phase of not having legacy holding me back. And I've already done I did one refactor of like the authentication model, and I was like, this just reminded me too much of early days of Drip and like pulling subscribers away from campaigns and some of those things that we were having to do with customers already on the platform. So I couldn't just nuke the database and
agonizing.
Yeah.
So it takes 5 times as long when you have customers, right?
Yeah.
And so you just nuked your database, didn't you?
I did.
Oh,
yeah.
That's the best feeling.
I rewrote. So there's things called database migrations that are incremental changes that are time stamped, and you run them in order, and it will produce the database schema you want. And that's how you mutate it over time. And I literally went back and rewrote history because I'm like, I do not need to preserve this at all. Rather than like doing a bunch of like incremental changes from the state it was before, I'm like, I can just rewrite history and have a clean history, and
that's the way to do it.
Won't last forever, but
like you said, you're relishing it while you're there. And you've seen both sides, the whole range, and so it's super helpful to have that knowledge going into a new app, right? Of like, not just that you can relish it at this point, but that you can look down the line and say, someday it's going to be, someday it's going to be like this, like it's going to be a lot harder, and I got to think about that now, right? So you lay the foundation for that.
Yeah, totally. Other things I've done, so I signed up for, I've been meaning to form the company officially so I can start like making sure all my intellectual property is assigned to the company and start just all that rolling. And I found out at MicroConf that they launched LLC support for Stripe Atlas, which was really cool. I mean, I think I still could have made it work with a corporation, but I think an LLC is just simpler in a lot of ways and sort of was built specifically for the purpose of a bootstrapper or someone who just wants to be on the smaller side and not deal with the overhead of a full like C corp. And so signed up for that this week and already have an entity formed.
Do you really?
It was like magic.
That is magic.
It was amazing.
Jeez, it's like an obfuscation layer over all the BS of forming a company.
Literally, I filled out the application within a few hours, got back like a DocuSign link to some documents and signed those, and it was like 20 pages of basically boilerplate. And I have so much trust for Stripe that I read through it and was like, I think this looks like mostly boilerplate, but like, I know they know what they're doing. They've got Patrick McKenzie on board. They've got,
they're smart people thinking
about this. Like, I don't feel like they're going to be landmines in here. I feel like I can trust them. So I basically just signed it. And then within a few hours, got back another link. It's like, we've set up your bank account with Aslo. Here's the, we just like sign these few things authorizing that you have read the terms, whatever. And then did that, and a few hours later got an email back that was like, okay, set your password and here's your thing, link your bank account, transfer some money. It was just all like super smooth. And I think that's what one of the things I love so much about Stripe is that as like a business is they've built such a nice layer on top of so much nastiness, and even just this whole process of forming companies, I feel like is similar to dealing with credit card processing, where there's all these archaic processes and legal hoops you have to jump through, and the fact that they've abstracted that is just so cool.
It is. It was a problem everyone knew was there, and just none of us wanted to tackle it. It was such a monumental effort. Yeah, and to build Atlas like this, and obviously for those who don't have background, it's basically a program that allows you to form a company, and it was only C corps, it's Delaware C corps for the past. They launched it a year or two ago, you think?
I think about a year probably.
And then I think at some point you can change a C corp into an S corp or whatever, and then but LLCs are what, like you said, what bootstrappers want, because it's a pass through entity, right? Because you don't pay double taxation on it. So they just launched LLCs really at MicroConf. Was the first day, I think, and. I'm pleased to hear that it was that seamless. Because my experience with Gusto, which used to be Zen Payroll, was not that seamless. It was fine, but it seemed like it was all going to be in the app, and then there was all this other stuff. Like as soon as we added Zach in New York, they were kind of like, all right, now you need the New York whatever unemployment insurance, and I was like, cool, set me up. And they're like, nope, you have to go do that. And I was like, oh, so they it only went to an edge, And I'm not ragging on them because they'll probably get there, but it's like the promise of it was that it would all be taken care of, and I had to then go put in a bunch of hours. And it wasn't just unemployment; it was like there's disability, and then you need a state employer number. Like there were 3 or 4 different.
It's like sales tax nexus and that kind of stuff too.
And I had to go file. I had to go figure those out. And then once you had it set up, they would then file, which was fine. But I probably spent 6 or 8 hours screwing around with, because it's a bunch of janky websites you have to go to. So that was not as nice as I thought. And then the other one was Zenefits, which is who did our health benefits for Drip before the acquisition. It was similar. It was like, this is awesome, I'm just going to sign these things. And then it's like, it's not actually that easy. Then I had to go do a bunch of work. So it's super cool to hear that Stripe took it to the point where it, at least you're 3 days in or something, it hasn't been that, that big.
I suspect there may be some things that like are not going to be smooth. Like, I don't know what the process of making changes. I know they have an agreement with Oric, I think, and like Oric sort of,
which is a law firm,
big Silicon Valley based law firm and I think they developed a lot of the documents, and I think they have some easy path to consulting with an Oric lawyer or something for some things.
That makes sense.
But I suspect there probably are areas like once you. Like, I think they make it easy to add members to your LLC. Like, it's pretty straightforward and some of these other things. But I don't know when tax time comes, I don't know what complexities are going to be. And I don't think now that you talk about, like, payroll and stuff, that would be another great area for Stripe to cover. Because
just a branch. And, you don't know if that's you don't know what they want to, be that abstraction layer on top of. But, do they integrate with Zen or with Gusto, or do they just handle it themselves? Because that's a big effort. I mean, Gusto's been working on it for 4 years solid, and they're getting there, but I still don't think they're there.
They should buy them and then put their Stripe touch on it.
But totally.
Yeah. Free M&A advice right here on
There it is. So call us some bros if you haven't thought about it. Cool. That's the thing with advice like this, because we used to get it or still get it, and it's like they've thought a lot more about it than we have, and that's always the thing when I get advice from someone I don't know or who hasn't thought about it as much as I have. It's instantly like, if it comes from you or it comes from someone that we know and trust, it's like, okay, I believe you have my best interest at heart. But oftentimes advice is just like an off the cuff thought that you had once, and it's like, that didn't work, and I thought about that for 6 hours once.
You know what? The other thing I love about Stripe is that hearing Patrick Collison, CEO of Stripe, did a Q&A at MicroConf, which is super awesome. It's great that they're, a self-made billionaire my age just walking around the conference. I just looked over one day at MicroConf and there he was standing by the water cooler jotting down notes during a talk. I'm like, this is still mind-blowing. But when he gave their story, he was like, basically alluded to, he's obviously a wicked smart guy, but also they sort of had a lot of luck along the way with Stripe becoming successful. And a big part of it was like just believing they could transform the financial industry, or just like somehow like get banks to trust them and build this whole layer. And it's just super inspiring that it's such a classic Silicon Valley story, I guess, of like, I don't know, we were just like young, naive kids who saw a problem and just like forged ahead with it and just made what needed to happen to build this thing.
Right. Envisioned a world that was different, very different. And it's just crazy no one had tried to solve it in that way before. Yeah. And it really it would have taken a developer, or a couple developers in this case, to realize that there is such an easy solution. Well, the easy solution is to put this layer up here, and then the hard solution is everything they did below. And I still don't exactly know what that looks like on the back end. Are there still people like doing the faxing on the back end with the thing, or have they just automated all that? I have no idea. But I have a tough time believing, because their wedge in was us. It was developers. Right?
Yeah.
That was, and I think their headline, we could go back on the Wayback Machine. But I believe their headline early on was like the easiest way to take payments for developers. And remember, they were on the homepage. Yeah. Early on, there was like a command line, whatever. Yeah. Whether it was a GIF or something you could type in. It was like. Yeah.
I remember you could basically spin up a Stripe account just by clicking a link. Like you would just be like, take me to my Stripe account. It's like, we've set it up for you. You can set your password later, but here, do a test payment. Yeah. And it was amazing. Yeah. I think there's something to be said for targeting developers, which is where I hope this strategy will apply to Level as well. Right. Where like for what it's worth, like developers sort of tend to latch on to these grassroots movements, and I think it has proven to be a very good path for apps to gain traction if you can win the hearts and minds of developers. Yeah. So that's what I'm hoping I can do with Level, and I think that's probably what Slack did too. They were sort of appealing to the nerdy developer who wanted chat in the workplace.
Right. So I think Trello did that as well, because it was originally built for like the Kanban or Kanban. Yeah. And I remember hearing like realtors are using this, and people for home improvement projects, and I was like, "What? This is like a software development thing." But
fully jumped the chasm.
It totally did, and someday you do. Now you don't need. I don't think depending on what you want to do with the business, you don't need to check across the chasm. No, you could build a perfectly like suitable, 6-7 figure business. Yeah. Purely with developers if you want, and then obviously the potential is 8, 9. I don't even know what Slack is. You have to look, but it's a lot of money.
That's a lot of figures.
Yeah, I lose count at a certain point.
Yeah, so. Totally.
Cool.
What else? You have things on you literally have an envelope.
I do.
With things scribbled on
back of the envelope. Yeah, I couldn't find scratch paper here, so I have notes. I think I have. Well, the only thing is thanks for forcing me to shower this morning by 10 a.m. because you told me. I thought we were going to record a podcast, and then you were like, "Yeah, we're going to do it on video too." And it was like, "Uh-oh, I need to clean myself up."
Shower. You're wearing pants. Thank you.
Yeah. I was gonna. If we weren't on video, I would have walked into your apartment in some boxers. Yeah. This is not appropriate.
It's retired life.
Yeah, that's it, man. Yeah. When you're unemployed, you can roll that way.
Yeah.
I think that's it for me. I mean, I just wanted to hear updates on Level, and it sounds like it sounds like it's moving along, and I think you got a good road ahead of you, man. This is a fun one.
So, I did have one question for you. Yeah. So this was sort of like your MicroConf talk. You talked about sort of the pros and cons of being in a funded environment versus a bootstrapped environment, right? Or self-funded. And one of the things you talked about was Colin from Customer.io's term Fundstrapping, which is sort of the hybrid approach of raising some angel investment, but not necessarily going for a Series A, right? And that seemed to, like, based on me being in the room and hearing all the questions, like almost everyone was asking you questions about Fundstrapping, right? And trying to.
I was surprised by that.
Yeah, and I think so. I think I mean, I want to hear your assessment of why that is, but for me, it seems like, a lot of people are attracted to the bootstrap self-funded route, but it's just a really hard road. And I think, there is sort of this conventional wisdom in the business world of like, you should be spending other people's money. And so I think it's like people wanting to get more into that phase, but not fully give up control from like the traditional VC route and have those kind of growth targets. Does that seem...
Yeah. I mean, is that why you would do it? Is that what you're...
I mean, that would be why I would do it as a founder. Does that seem like...
That's the benefit it's a way to... Because so institutional money is where you get into, I'll say, trouble, or that's when it gets really complicated. The point of no return is once you've accepted institutional money. Because then you have a board, you have board seats. Now, a lot of people accept institutional money but they don't give up control of their company. Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to. I mean, Lead Pages was, the as far as I know, the VCs do not own a majority. So they couldn't, do things that you hear about, 10, 15 years ago where you get voted out of your own company, that kind of stuff. Right. So there's plenty these days that are not doing that. But it adds a level of rigor where you have to now have these monthly reports and these board meetings and, all the stuff that I talked about in my talk, which is like... Yeah. That's why you don't raise funding is because you don't want to deal with that, right? Yeah. Nor you need to hit the 100 million or whatever it is, ARR. And so, Fundstrapping is kind of that in between, and it's raising, like I said, between 250 and 500K is what I'm seeing. And since it's not institutional money, you raise it from a group of angels, right? And maybe you get a bunch of people writing you 25K and 50K checks. Yep. And they have ownership, but maybe you sell 10 or 15% of your company. There's no board, and you, in essence, you don't answer to them. I mean, you obviously have like ethical obligations and there's legal, intricacies. Yeah. And frankly, a bunch of the companies that I've invested in, I say a bunch. I've invested in a total of 11, and I think 4 of them are fund-strapped, 4 or 5, and many of those have like the founders' parents are like putting like retirements at like 100K. Yeah. So there's not just a fiduciary duty, but like you imagine how you
arguably more of a responsibility than if you were taking VC money. I mean, VC money is a calculated risk on their part. Yep. You don't feel like you're going to maybe bankrupt your parents their retirement by this thing failing.
That's right. Yeah. And so, I think, again, Rand Fishkin's book, Lost and Founder, goes deep into like the troubles with VC, and he goes even way deeper than I even understood. Yeah. And he's like, as soon as you're not growing fast, like the VCs don't want to spend their time with you because they have these other companies and they want to stick with the ones that grow, and they only want the 1 in 10 that's going to 10 or 100x. Yeah. And that doesn't happen with Fundstrapping, Right. No, so it can be I think could be the best of both worlds. Mm-hmm. Now, the struggle with it, I mean, there's a bunch of negatives to it too, right? You do have to go through all the legal crap of getting documents and getting people in. You're taking their money, so you do feel pressure. You know, there were some quotes I had from some businesses I invested in where it's like, I feel pressure because I have your money. Right.
And knowing my personality, I will probably feel I will be on the camp of feeling pressure, not like, it's fine. Like, that's money.
Other people's money. Yeah. Right? Potentially, there's, like you said, there might be more pressure because it's your friends, it's your community, maybe your microconfers, and it's not some institutional money. Yeah. But it can help you go faster, and it can also help you, I mean, going into a competitive space these days, like when people say, hey, I'm going to start a SaaS in the whatever space, I think, wow, there's already 10 doing that. And that wasn't the case, 2010, right? You could pick a niche, go vertical, and it was a little easier, and then it's gotten harder and harder. So I certainly don't think Fundstrapping is a silver bullet, but I do think it's an emerging, I don't, phenomenon's a wrong word, but like it's an emerging kind of movement, and definitely more people are thinking about it. Yeah. Question in my mind, long term, is VC investments typically take 10 years, between 7 and 15 years to figure out, like, did we make any money? Yeah. And Fundstrapping is not that old. There hasn't been, Customer.io is the first one I ever heard do it. Now, has Customer.io returned enough money that it made it worth worth their investing? I don't know. Yeah. And the investments I have, none of them have, right? The only investment I have that's returned anything was WP Engine, which was 7 years ago that I made it. Yeah. So long term, will Fundstrapping be around, or is it not a viable business strategy? Yeah. Is there not enough profit thrown off to pay the investors back? Right.
It's sort of, it's an experiment right now. Right. But it's an experiment that you like, so it's interesting that do you feel like deep down, like more of a, like this is a model that should exist, like it's a healthy model, and therefore I'm going to engage in angel investments of this kind, or so it's sort of a risk on your part, right? Yeah. You're.
Yeah.
you're going into it knowing that maybe this won't actually return a bunch, but
right.
let it be part of it.
Because that's right, because I believe that it should exist, right?
Yeah.
Because for people like us and microconfers and just our, kind of bootstrap community, I think it's going to be a better place if this exists. I think more of us will be successful, and I think kind of validates the model. But, venture capital was super disorganized, and it was, a cottage industry and kind of a mess until really the mid to late 90s. And, I mean, it's only been proven out, so to speak. It's existed since I think the 70s, maybe.
It was like Sequoia Capital, like
those guys even came around late, in the 80s, I believe.
Yeah.
And so, and there was like one firm doing it, and then there was 2 and 3, and it was still kind of a mess. And so, if this works, it'll take a long time to do it. But there is precedent, when you start a car wash, or a restaurant or whatever, you get essentially Fundstrapped. You don't plan on raising another round later, but you do need startup capital,
right?
And you plan to invest that in the business, and if it works, you pay back with dividends or or payouts. So.
Yeah. I suspect this has been happening in one form or another. It's just the tech industry has sort of relabeled it, and it's like it's an uncommon alternative to the common path of the typical tech startup that goes VC these days. So. Right. Yeah, I bet people in other industries would be like, you guys have reinvented something that we've been doing for hundreds of years.
This is just called business financing, where I come from,
Yeah.
And but you're right. VC has been typical because a lot of the businesses that have been started are these kind of moonshot ideas, whereas it's really just been in the past, let's say 12, 13 years, where non-moonshot software ideas were even really a thing. Before that, it was like you could have a kind of a WinZip or an FTP download or shareware, but think there was no SaaS, and so as that's come about, it's like, wait, this is a totally viable model to make 6 or 7 figures, and if I could throw off 30%, 40% net margins, I don't know, do the numbers work out? I think they might at a certain point.
Seems like they would, especially if this type of financing has been happening for car washes and restaurants for a long time, but the margins on those businesses
are low,
so low. And you look at the margins of a SaaS company, and the potential to pay back to get an ROI much faster is there. So
the kicker is the valuations, and if people go out and they try to Fundstrap, this is the thing I've been trying to run the math on, is if you try to Fundstrap at kind of venture valuations or Series A valuations, I don't know if you're ever going to get your money back. So almost the valuations have to be lower by definition, because you're never going to hit that big one. So that's I think, remains to be seen. And certainly someone smarter than I has been thinking about this, like Bryce Roberts from Indie.vc. I think they have they have the model dialed in. So,
and I guess the other thing is probably that a car wash, or for example, you may be buying a building as part of this. So there's a physical asset that could be sold in the event things go south. You could sell this thing and get some money back. But in software, it's all intellectual property, right? There's no so interesting.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I think we've probably talked for long enough on the main part of the show. I think we should probably wrap it up. But
sounds good,
thanks for coming.
For sure, man.
Yeah, we got to do this again.
Indeed. I had a great time.
Yeah, kick Ben off again. And
let's just say for the next 52 weeks or so, I show up here.
Nice. And this was fun. So if you're listening to the audio of this, we're actually standing in the same room because we're both in Minneapolis. So it's always fun to do these when the opportunity arises.
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks again for having me on.
Yeah, you bet. And the show notes can be found at artofproductpodcast.com. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Well, should we do a postlude?
I think so.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's been a while since we did one, but
I know.
The feedback has been good on it. Have you guys gotten feedback on? Well, actually, I'm not supposed to talk about those. But
yeah, I say you're not supposed to. Yeah, we have. People have said similar things where it's don't do them every time.
Yeah,
and people will start to listen, and if they're I don't care about because we talk about movies and all types of random. We talked about crypto one time, and if you don't care about that, I just skip it. And so overall, it's just fun to talk about.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
That's, for me, I'm almost doing it for me rather than
right.
Anyway, but people seem to enjoy it, and to hear us get more casual, right? Where I don't feel stiff and stilted on my podcast, but as soon as I listen to the after show, I'm always like, why do I sound so relaxed all of a sudden?
I bet. I mean, I would guess on yours, you're trying to. Just the format of your podcast, you're trying to make it so the meat of the show is tactical, and it's not no, it's not necessarily like personality driven or entertainment driven.
Yeah.
It's all about like, let's deliver the information to provide value.
Yeah.
So you kind of probably click into like professor mode a little
Totally.
bit there.
Yep.
And yeah.
Although we've learned over the years, people say, yeah, I came for the information and I stick around for the stories.
Yeah.
Like, so they like, be more people and, be more real humans.
Yeah.
And first, if you go, don't do this, but if you were to go back and listen to like the first 40, 50 episodes, like we were super stiff in educational. And then it wasn't until in the 30s or 40s where like Mike and I went back and told our story. We talked about fears and all this stuff, and that clicked with people, and they were like, oh my gosh, this is what you should be talking about.
Yeah.
So
well, I think that was one of the inspirations for Ben and I. That's why we went like full swing, all story, no tactics,
Yep.
And I don't know. There's a niche who enjoys following along with the story for sure.
For sure.
Maybe not quite as broad of a base. There's, I'm sure you guys have much larger potential of people who, a portion of your audience comes for the tactics and like couldn't care less about the story, But then, I don't know.
We do see reviews. We saw a review one time that was like 1 star, and it was in iTunes, and it was like 7 minutes of talking about bull crap, and then a cursory overview of something. Hey, get yourselves together, man, or something. Gosh. And it was like, I guess that guy didn't care about the story, but it's 1 in 500 iTunes reviews.
Right back and be like, I release you from your obligation to listen to my podcast.
Exactly. I'm sorry. Do you want me to refund the money you paid for this podcast?
So. Give me your Bitcoin address and I'll send you 0.
Exactly. Speaking of Bitcoin, what's how you been feeling about? So it was up end of last year, January it started going down, right, all the way until tax time, and then right after tax time, it came back up, and now it's dropped a little bit in the last couple of days. Not just Bitcoin either, like crypto in general, right? Because you have a few different.
So I started playing around with it. It was probably like a year and a half ago, I think, and I literally just put in. Just kind of rewinding through my crypto story because I don't think I've told it. Like, I literally put in $1,000. This was right shortly after Drip acquisition. I'm like, okay, I'll gamble $1,000.
Yeah. So it's mid 2016 then.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Okay. Yeah, time flies. So I did that, and then I really didn't pay attention to it at all.
That's the best kind of investing,
right
there.
Yeah. And I frankly almost forgot about it. Like, I kind of stopped checking Coinbase for a while, and then it was like, I don't know, not quite a year later when it had rallied. I was starting to see the news about it. You were starting to talk about it more. Like, oh, did you check the Bitcoin price? And I'm like, oh yeah, I have that coin. Right. I think I bought it it was like $800 or $900. So I had just a little over 1 coin. Yeah. And so then when I saw it rally up to 20 grand,
you're like, oh my God.
Of course, before that, it was when it had made it to 9 or 10 grand where I was like, this is quite interesting. Yeah. Like I still think of it as a pure gamble, and I'm unwilling to put any money into it that I'm not willing to lose. Right. But I did start averaging in a little bit more at that time, and I had some and then like Bitcoin Cash fork happened, and then Coinbase finally made it available like late last year, and it there was some weird stuff around that. I don't know if anyone ever unpacked what the spike was right after it launched, or if it was fraud or whatever, gaming. But I instantly sold that and netted a couple grand just out of nowhere. I'm like, this is insane. Yeah. So
it seems so unrealistic. This is happening. Yeah.
And then I had some Litecoin for a while, and it was just like, I don't really know. The thing is, even though I can't think of this as a traditional investment, I still feel like I got to the point where if I'm having a little bit of money in a bunch of things and I'm not actually I can't form a good opinion about whether I think Litecoin's going to be around for a while. I can at least pay attention to Ethereum and Bitcoin news.
Yeah.
But Litecoin, I have no idea, and the whole long tail, I'm just I feel like I want to be informed if I'm going to own some of this, even though it still is a gamble. So I sold it, and that made a nice profit too.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I don't think, I have my own personal opinions about it, but Litecoin is just kind of it was like the early fork of Bitcoin, and it's it's not a bad thing, but it really does not move in the same ways that Ethereum. I don't think it has the future. It'll be around, but I don't think it has the future. I don't think it's the silver to Bitcoin's gold.
Right. And I think some people were unsure about that, and I think the fact that that Coinbase offered sales of it, maybe that may have helped
I think big time.
give it legitimacy, because the biggest platform is it's one of the 3 that they offered. So
because there were rumors that Coinbase was gonna start supporting. I believe it was Monero, and Monero went through the roof, and then when they dispelled them, it dropped. Tanked. Right, so it's there's a real vote of confidence that Coinbase is going to support you.
Yeah. And then I don't know if I talked about my Coinbase drama, but my wallet, my USD wallet got frozen because I moved to Minnesota.
Yep.
And I updated my address on file, and they didn't notice, but when I did ID verification, that's when they cut it off.
Yep.
And I'd sort of forgotten about that in the sequence of events, and so when it happened, I was like, okay, I'll just email them, no big deal, withdraw my money. I have all my stuff in Gemini now.
Yeah.
So did send him a support ticket and waited 124 days before resolution.
Wow. It's a good thing you did not need that money to fix your car or something.
Right.
Wow. So 4 months.
Yep.
That's nuts. So they basically that sucks. So and you were tweeting them and everything, which
I was trying. I was pulling out all the stops. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I didn't want to like annoy my Twitter followers too much with this, but like, trying like maybe I'll get their social department to. Yeah. And then I called them up. They actually have a phone number, so I called them on the phone and talked to a rep. Yeah. And like told him like, yeah, my wallet's been frozen for 3 months now. Like, look, and he was like, oh my gosh, it's terrible. Well, certainly we can fix this right away. Hold on 1 second. And then came back and gave me the same stock answer that I've gotten from everyone else. I guess they had this tiny department that was responsible for reviewing these claims and like toggling your account back on so you can withdraw funds.
Got it.
And he's like, yep. He's like, their stock answer was, look, man, we had 100,000 customers join the platform in December right around the time you submitted it. So sorry, you're out of luck. Wow. Yeah. So I like from on the one hand, I like understand why they couldn't get to it, but I was still like, come on, guys. Yeah.
Because you had cash sitting in there.
I had cash in there.
Yeah. Out there. Yeah. Yeah. That's a bummer.
So. That's finally resolved.
Yeah, well, good. I'm glad. Yeah,
as of this week, actually.
I was going to say 2 months ago we were talking about this and it wasn't resolved. Yeah. So, and so you still own some of Bitcoin and Ether. Is that right?
So I stopped averaging in when, it was during the slide when it was going down. I was still like, okay, buying opportunity as it's sliding down from 20K. Yeah. But my wife checking to see if we were done recording. Yeah. This is post-lude. We're not done. So I'd been averaging in, and then it just continued to slide, and I'm like, all right, I've hit my threshold on what I'm willing to put in. Yeah. So I didn't touch it, so I haven't sold any of my Bitcoin or Ethereum, but I'm just sort of like hanging on to it.
Hodling.
Yeah.
Hodling.
Is that what they call it?
I don't know how you pronounce it, but HODL. I mean, it's like a typo on HOLD, like hold.
Oh, okay.
And it's a crypto thing, really a Bitcoin thing, where they would be like, because it's so volatile, right? That people would get all this Bitcoin and go way up, and then they just hodl so that everything doesn't go down. Like when don't panic and sell, and so that's what you'll see. The hodlers are the people, there are people with hundreds of thousands of these, right, that are just hanging on for dear life. So that's cool.
It's still, and then what's your policy, Ben, on it? Are you just
I'm hanging on to it. Yeah, I mean, no, well, so here's what I did. I start right after the acquisition as well. Yeah. So, I used to love investing, and once I started starting companies, I just ran out of the bandwidth to manage it. So I would do the 401k or whatever, the, IRA stuff, and just throw it in ETFs. But as soon as sold the company, I suddenly found this headspace of like, oh yeah, I love this stuff. Yeah. Like I love trying to figure out securities and all this stuff. So started investing more, and I was talking to Clay, and he was like, I had owned a little bit of Bitcoin, but he's like, you can dollar cost average it now. And I didn't know that. So right away, July 2016, Ether was at $4, and Bitcoin was probably, I would guess, 600 or 700. And I started averaging in, and which was obviously happened to be a good choice, but I viewed it as an angel investment. I was telling you this, like, it's either going to zero or I'm going to make 10 or 100x on it. And so that was, it kept going up and up and up. And what's interesting is I put way more money in than I would have in the past, because there was proceeds from my net. It was, as a percentage of my net worth, it was still a tiny percent. Right. But then it ballooned up to this enormous, like a third of my net worth or some insane thing where it was like, whoa, that feels uncomfortable. Right. Any financial planner would tell you, like, sell. Yeah. So I started, as it would jump up, I would dollar cost average out. Really individually, not on time base. I would watch, because it would float. It would go down and up. And then when I'd see the big jump up, so like when it hit, $3,000 for the first time, I sold like 1%, and then when it hit $6,000, I would sell 3%. Yeah. But it kept going up, so that I didn't have any less dollar value worth, So it was this weird, it's an odd problem to have. Yeah. It sounds like a first world problem. It's like things keep going up, So
my asset allocation is way out of balance because my Bitcoin is 100x.
Exactly. So, but then I got in. I mean, even back then in late 2016, I didn't know, is it going to be Bitcoin? Is it Ether? Is it Litecoin? So I bought Monero. I bought a bunch of things.
Yeah.
I think I had 6 or 8 of them, and I have sold some since then. I sold some because it just felt like the right thing to do as it went up. I sold part of that I bought a car. I've never, I bought my Volvo. I've never had a nice car, and I bought that. But everything else, I'm just kind of hanging out and see what happens long term. Yeah. Again, it's money that it would be a bummer if it went to zero at this point, but it's nothing. I mean, I've pulled out so much more than my initial investment at this point. I was playing with house money like 18 months ago,
Yeah.
So.
I haven't gotten to the place of playing with house money, I don't think, because I averaged in for a little while, but I'm still significantly up over what I've put in.
There it is.
And so I've been trying to, it's become harder and harder to keep track of how much I've put in.
I know. It gets tricky. Tax time was a little tough for me this year, actually. Yeah. It was a challenge. So.
I'd luckily only sold Bitcoin Cash, I think. Either that or Litecoin. I'd only sold one in the tax year, so it was pretty simple.
Makes it easy.
The cost basis was straightforward, and the whatever, and Coinbase was just had beta tax tools or whatever. That was I don't know if I can really trust this.
Gotta open numbers right. Yeah, the biggest thing, if you're out there and you're thinking about this, is if you're gonna buy it, hold it for a year so that you can get the long-term treatment. Otherwise, it's income tax rates, and then you're just getting decimated. Yeah. So that's one mistake I made with just a portion of it. I didn't track the exact day. Yeah. And so when I actually printed it all out from Coinbase, and I have a couple other, what do you call them? Not marketplaces, but the
exchanges.
Yep, that I use. I was off by a few days, and so I had some short-term sells, and it was just like, man, I'm going to pay whatever it is. A third of that goes away.
The capital long-term cap gains rule applies to this?
Yes.
Or hold it for more than a year?
Yep. Yeah. So that's the big thing that I screwed up with. Just a small portion of it, but I realized that could have been a lot of money. Yeah. But now there are these funds, and that's what I did sell some and throw it into, essentially it's like an ETF, but it has a high minimum, and you have to be accredited, I believe, to be in it. So, but they are across the top 15 currencies by market cap. And
diversification.
Yeah. And so that's what I would love to just, frankly, I'd love to pull all my money out and throw it in there, but I don't want to pay all the taxes on the sale yet. Right. So long term, I don't want to manage stuff in exchanges. To me, I view this as just another.
It's sort of like buying. Hey, you're buying individual stocks right now, and that's not. Yep. That's not really the best approach for stock market investing. You want diversification built in.
And even stocks, it's a little different than stocks because it's more. These exchanges are way more cumbersome. I can't just sell all that I have. There's all these limits. Right. They could feasibly get hacked. I know that some of them have insurance and some don't. Yeah. There's more complexity holding individual coins, and there's this management of it, and you can send it to the wrong address, and it's just gone. That won't happen with stocks. Yeah. There's actual danger. So I prefer for someone else to be the custodian of it, and for the diversification as well. So I know people are working on the ETFs. Yeah. And I think that once that comes out, I just view it as another asset class, right? It's do I want to go out and buy individual bonds, or do I want to own a Vanguard bond fund, right? And do I want to buy individual, REITs? I don't want to go buy individual real estate buildings, but I own REITs, right? Yeah. And so crypto is should be a very narrow slice of your portfolio or my, I'm not giving advice obviously, but I never viewed it as I'm all in on crypto. I know some people are have a lot of their liquid net worth in it. And I'm like, that's it. That's either going to pay off for you or wow.
Right. Yeah. I think Clay has a podcast now where he's sort of just journaling stuff. And I think there's one where he was talking about his Bitcoin strategy. Okay. Where he was like, he's experimenting with trying to live off cryptocurrency income or something like that, and sell off just enough to pay the next month's bills or whatever.
Interesting.
And I don't know how that's working out now that it's taken a big dip and it's been down for kind of trending downward for a little while, or up and down. But it sounded based on what he said on there, he had a pretty significant chunk of assets in crypto. So
I can imagine.
He's building a whole startup around it. So he's very bullish on them. Yeah. But yeah. It's hard when people like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, all these guys are super thumbs down on crypto. Yeah. And it's who's wrong here? I don't know.
And with it's tough because Warren Buffett's certainly a smart guy. Yeah. There was the most recent episode of Silicon Valley. I don't know if you saw it, but it's about they talk about launching their own, instead of getting a Series B, about doing an ICO. Yeah. For the company, it's not Pied Piper anymore, is it? yeah, whatever
I'm a
it's
little
called.
behind on
I think it might be called
Yeah.
that. But and one of the guys is like, yeah, Warren Buffett, says it's not worth anything, and he's like, yeah, why do you think that is? Because Warren Buffett has 68 billion of this other token that's, it's the thing here, but it's a new token and
Yeah.
it could potentially devalue this other one, and that's it. So they have this really interesting conversation about it. I'm not saying, I've always been a fan of Buffett, and so he may be right, and that's why I don't have any more money in it than I can lose,
Yeah.
But it's definitely like gambling on or betting on startups.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, starting companies is risky too. I never had more money in companies than it would have been catastrophic for my emotional state, but it would not have, I wouldn't have lost the house, right?
Yep.
On startups.
Yeah,
so.
totally. Yeah, it's interesting to think of it as like, think of your net worth as, allocated in a certain way, and just figuring out what's the slice you're going to put into it.
Totally.
And, 1 or 2% seems reasonable, and, probably won't send you into ruination. I mean, this is assuming you have a certain, pool of assets that are beyond living expenses or whatever. But assuming you're in that scenario, it's kind of interesting. Even if for someone it's $300. Like,
it's fun.
It's interesting to think of it that way. It sort of separates the emotion from investing.
Totally.
For me, at least.
That's right. Yeah, that's how I view investing as asset allocation.
Yeah.
And so I have, I don't know exact number, but maybe 3% of my net worth is in precious metals.
Yeah.
Which sounds just like, why would you own precious metals? Now, so, some of it is physical in a vault, and others is the paper. There are ETFs you can buy of gold. Yeah. And I buy it because it hedges inflation. There's a bunch of reasons, but it's a very small amount because it doesn't earn income. Yeah. And it's the same thing with Bitcoin, where it's like, well, or crypto in general. There's no income coming off of this, but I do realize that there are times when it's going to go up when the market's going down, or vice versa, and it's purely a hedge against that. So I think, like you're saying, 1 to 3% is always the number in my head when I think about these odd or like alternative asset classes. Collectibles. That I like collect like really expensive comic books from the 50s, 60s, even the 40s. Mm-hmm. And I actually just got yesterday Bill Watterson is Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah.
So he his original art, he never releases it.
Really?
And never, very rarely. So like his original art for a strip is like, to get it's like 40, 50 grand. So I did not get one of those because that's very expensive. But the last strip, it's called The Last Sunday. Mm-hmm. There's a print of it, so it's not the original, but it's wet signed by him, and which is again unusual. You can't just go and buy wet sign, like it's only up for auction, because he was always kind of a hermit and a little bit of a curmudgeon. Mm-hmm. So anyways, I won one at auction yesterday.
Nice.
It's The Last Sunday. It's framed and it has a wet sign Bill Watterson, and I'm such like a Calvin and Hobbes fan. So it's that kind of stuff, but that. Again, it's like less than 3% of my net worth is in those things, but I view it, I didn't buy that. That's not buying a car. Right. It is very unlikely to go down if I hold it. If you overpay for it, art can go up and down or whatever, but like that asset, if you look at it over the course of the last 20 years, as long as Bill Watterson doesn't do something that like tarnishes his name, right? I mean, that could happen. Right. That's the risk.
He's a serial abuser
sexually
or something.
harass people, then it would be catastrophic.
Right.
But if he just goes on and passes away like most artists or whatever, like that's actually a piece of something that I enjoy in my home, and also, I do view it as an actual asset.
Yeah.
But again, you want it to be less than a few percent.
To go putting 50%, 30% into
catastrophic.
Yeah. So. Cool,
man.
I think that's good. We better kill this video before it like sucks up all my disk space. I'm getting a little nervous.
Crash. Yeah. It's a long one.
Cool. All right. Until next time.